All right, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Again, thank you, everyone, for coming out to Aupuni Center. If anyone isn't sure why they are here, today we are having a public hearing, basically a public meeting in lieu of a public hearing which should be held by the U.S. Army Garrison Pohakuloa. This is in response to the Incorporated Cultural Resource Management Plan that was just recently published, and the comment period is up on December 7th. Now, the environmental assessment of this cultural resources management plan produced a finding of no significant impact. And in a moment, I'll get into that a little bit more because that's outrageous, I know. But the reason that we are having this meeting and that the Army won't is because under a finding of no significant impact, they are not obligated by law to hold any kind of public meeting, although they are holding public comments which they are accepting. This meeting is intended to be in conjunction with a meeting, pretty much an almost identical meeting over in Kona at West Hawaii Civic Center tomorrow at 5:30 for the same purpose. Now, I do not really have any kind of presentation aside from my own testimony that I'll be submitting about the Integrated Cultural Resources Management Plan. Again, the purpose of this meeting is mainly to collect testimony. Also, I do want to mahalo the kids from the Haas school that came out for this, and we'll be showing a student produced film afterward, depending on how many folks do end up testifying. Let's see, I also want to mahalo Maluaina, Jim Albertini, and Ruth Aloa over in Kona, who will be also holding a meeting. I also want to say mahalo to County Council member Jen Ruggles, who helped us to get this room. I'm not the county, I wouldn't have been able to secure this room for us. Also, part of the reason that we were having it here as compared to in a school cafeteria or any other location is primarily because I believe members of County Council and the public relations officer for Pohakuloa training area were invited to these, but you know, weather. So Councilmember Ruggles will not be able to make it, and no one should be surprised that the Army isn't here. Jim, would you like to say anything before we begin?
Yeah, mahalo everyone for coming. We'll get into the testimony shortly, but I did bring some literature on the table, and one of the things, you know, out of tonight is a DVD is going to be made of this evening to submit to the Army, but encourage your friends. There's on the flyers the email address that they can send in testimony. So be sure to spread the word more than just beyond this evening. And there's also one flyer there about the Navy had an environmental impact statement hearing a week or two ago, and that comment period is still open, I believe, to December 12th. So you could send in comments there about their sonar and bombing plans in Hawaii, how it's going to affect marine life as well as people, land, and sea. So those are the key things, and I think we should just get on with the testimony. Let the people speak. So thanks.
Oh, sorry about that. Aloha, everyone. My name is Pua'ena An, and I wrangled everybody up to get this, decided to take the lead on this when our friend Ruth said that she was going to be doing a Kona meeting. So I guess we have her to thank, and if anyone wants to go out to Kona tomorrow evening over at West Hawaii Civic Center, again from 5:30 to, well, pretty much till POW. Oh, one other thing that I did want to mention, one major difference that's going to be going on tonight from most testimony sort of meetings and whatnot is that we will not be limiting you to 3 minutes. I will probably wave my hand when you get to about 5, but you know, take your time, but not too much. Let's enjoy the time that we have. It's going to be a little bit more than usual, but let's also be mindful of everyone else. Also, well, really quick, before we begin, for all the Haas students, how many of you folks know what Pohakuloa training area is? That's the majority of everybody. Okay, good. Would anybody like to tell me what goes on up there, of those of you who do know? Yes, correct. Bombing, all kinds of military training. That's where one of the locations that they host the RIMPAC exercises. Also, another issue why you guys, especially at your age, need to know about this place. They're not just bombing our sacred, the Aina itself, which is sacred, but also archaeological sites, Heao, there's Ivi Kupuna up there, not to mention the Army has been testing depleted uranium up there and depleted uranium munitions. When you get home, Google depleted uranium and find out what that is and what we're all breathing in, especially when we pass through that area. Okay, really quick, one last thing before we actually bring on the testimony and the first testifier. I'd like for everybody to ku'iluna, kako, stand up please. Pohakuloa is a Hawaiian place, so we're gonna start this out right. And you check the list here, bring up our first testifier. All right, Stephen?
So without see that? Sorry about that. That's just to remind me that I'm to testify. So I suspect that this may be seen by some of our military people, and I hope that they don't misunderstand. I'm very concerned about both the people of this community, Hilo, with regard to what's going on at Pohakuloa right now. But I'm also concerned about the people who are closest to what's going on there. The military itself is endangering the folks who are our employee up there, the employee of the U.S. government, and in particular with the amount of DU that's up there recently that's been documented that there is much more than the Army ever applied a license for, and I hope that. No, it's more than a hope. I think I have the right as a citizen to demand that all care be taken for everyone who's exposed to this to be treated in a healthy way. The military is a part of our society. And respect is something our society preaches. They expect us to respect what they're doing, and we expect them to respect the land, the culture, and the world we live in. One particular thing, the most recent thing that has come to my attention is the strategy that the military seems to be taking and using the land to develop. The strategy of promulgating fear. We're going to have a warning sound tomorrow because of, I'm not sure what. The idea is to create as much fear as possible, it seems, and I'm protesting that here and now. Each bomb that falls up there creates more fear, not security, and I'm demanding that stop now, and that respect for the people here and for the all the work that's gone into preserving a safe place for us to be is respected. So my testimony is to please respect, or I demand that respect be given to this land. Thank you.
Donna? Oh yeah, and folks, we will not be handing over any list of names or anything like that to the Army, so please introduce yourself at the beginning of your testimony. That's the only time they're going to hear your name. And also, if you are representing an organization, please indicate so.
Aloha kakao. My name is Donna Grabo. I rode my bicycle even though there's flooding. Please raise, yeah, it was very close, but please raise your hand if you live like 20 minutes away from here. Let's see. Okay, no, and more than 20 minutes. Okay, so this is really far, and thank you so much for coming out tonight because the roads are really crowded, and we're doing our part as a community. And this is what Commander Christopher Marquez asked of us when we met with the military at Pohakuloa training area. We had a meeting. He says, we have to go through our state legislators. We have to go through the process because they don't make the decisions that the politicians do. So we're doing our part. Thank you. So I'm going to just kind of reiterate some things that were already said. The reason why we're here is because the U.S. Army garrison of Pohakuloa is seeking public comment on its 2017 draft Cultural Resource Management Plan regarding the thousands and thousands of acres of Pohakuloa training area. And this document has one really strange, really weird clause in it, and we have to stand up against this. It says, the document states, the general objective of the Cultural Resource Management Program are to eliminate impacts to the military mission arising from cultural resources. That's very tricky. What do they mean by that? Cultural people that stand up to the military? I'm not really sure. The objective of the Cultural Resource Management Program are to eliminate impacts to the military mission arising from cultural resources. So despite these, and then despite these adverse impacts to archaeological resources and sacred sites, the environmental assessment concluded a finding of no significant impact. So there's there's this burial grounds and ahus, heiaus out there. And they have it all documented, these cultural sites. For this reason, the USAG Pohakuloa has declined to hold public meetings and is not legally obliged to do so under the FONSI, despite active public outreach having been included as an implement in the objective of ICRAMP. So the last thing I want to say is thank you, Jen Ruckles, for making this possible. And so also our cameramen that are volunteering, and they're going to send the tapes. So they're making a DVD of this so they can see the community is here. What is civilization? We never really experienced, our humanity has only experienced through the past militarizations. Even the kings had their bodyguards, power, control. Maybe democracy is an illusion, but we can get there, we can. And it's from the community, it's from bottom up. We can't sit back and because this is how we get in messes. So, a real civilization is when everybody has basic shelter, everyone in the world has food. These are basic human rights. That the militaries become, instead of militaries of war, militaries of peacekeeping. And no more violence. Thank you.
Again, I'm Jim Albertini of Malu Aina. And how this thing stays up here. I want it to stay here because I want to refer to notes. But I don't know if anybody else had trouble. I tried to go to the website last night and today. It was blocked out. I couldn't get in. Now, I don't know whether I was alone or other people had it, but I got to the site about a week ago and reviewed it, but I wanted to go back in more detail last night. But a couple of things that caught my eye. First of all, that statement that Donna quoted, that mission is trumping cultural resources. That's backwards. This should be looking at military impacts to cultural resources, not cultural resources impacts to a military mission. This is an EA on cultural resources. Now, a couple of things that caught my eye is one that no religious sites have been designated at Pohakuloa as of November 2016. No religious sacred sites. Now, that's very strange because that whole area, Pohakuloa, means the land of the night of long prayer. And we know that there are very special places up there, all the pu'u. And again, there's the Umi Heiau over near Hualalai, that whole area, Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, Hualalai, that whole heavenly realm as it's defined. And it's very interesting. It's also interesting to note that the military claims they've been bombing for 70 years, and they've surveyed less than 1/3 of the 132 or 133,000 acres. Now, what have they been doing for 70-some years other than bombing? They certainly have been put culture priorities up there on the list, you know. Now, Julie Ta'omio, who is the cultural person, has been up there since, I believe, 1995, so over 20 years. She, in a meeting that we had with her last December 19th at Pohakuloa, she said they've identified 1,200 cultural sites. 1,200. That's on, of course, the 1/3 or less than 1/3 of the base that's been surveyed. So it's certainly reasonable to believe that if they did a complete survey, there'd be several thousand cultural sites. But again, the mission is the priority. So I've been dealing with these commanders that change every 2 years up there now for over 30 years. And things are getting worse and worse in terms of stonewalling the community. And the lack, they use phrase of dialogue and listening and hearing one another, but it's been getting worse and worse. I think certainly Trump contributes to a climate of this kind of thing too. But it's the military themselves. When I look back over all these different commanders now, the best one that we ever had was a woman, an African-American woman commander. Her name was Warlene Richardson. And she really attempted some kind of dialogue with the community. Maybe it's because of her background. But she even brought her boss, the garrison commander for all of Hawaii, to Maluaina. I remember it on Veterans Day. It would have been about 2010. And we had a meeting. There were about 20 or 30 of us there, mostly Kanaka Maoli. And one of the people brought up the resolution that called for stopping all live fire and cleanup of depleted uranium. And the commander, the colonel, the full colonel from Oahu, he kind of backhanded that comment and said, it's only a resolution. And one of the Kanaka Maoli said, you know, the Newlands resolution that supposedly annexed Hawaii, it was only a resolution. You know, and that's when the commander pounded the table and said, stopping live fire is not going to happen. So it was very clear that, in his judgment, the voice of the county council or the state or anybody else is subservient to the military. You know, I want to mention one other thing that Shelley brought to our attention that I actually forgot about. Hawaii had a constitutional convention in 1978. And I was on Oahu teaching school over there. And I brought up, and we tried to get an outright ban on nuclear power plants for Hawaii and also nuclear waste being disposed of in Hawaii. And we couldn't get an outright ban. I remember Jerry Harris, who was the mayor of Honolulu later on, he was in that con and powerful permission. I was just a citizen raising concerns. But what we did get out of that, it's written into the state constitution, that before nuclear waste could be disposed of in Hawaii or a nuclear power plant, a commercial plant could be built, it would require 2/3 vote of both houses of the legislature. Now, the military at Pohakuloa has a license to allow the depleted uranium to remain in place. Now, if you have a license to allow garbage to remain in place, that's my definition of a dump. So if you're allowing the DU to remain in place and not cleaned up, it's violating the state constitution. But again, besides that DU resolution we got passed about stopping live fire and this state constitution thing, Hawaii County, you know, was the first municipality in the entire United States to pass a law declaring itself a nuclear-free zone, 1981. And for 3 years, we politely asked the Navy to stop bringing in its nuclear ships. We didn't know about the DU at Pohakuloa at that time, and they refused. And then we finally said we're going to have a swimming blockade of the warships. And the day before the ship arrived, Steve Yamashiro, who was the county council chair at the time, passed emergency legislation that I'm sure violated the Sunshine Law requirements of hearing, 6 days notice on hearings. And they put an amendment on that nuclear-free law to exempt the military. So it's like having a no-smoking law and exempt smokers. So we went forward to uphold the nuclear-free law. We entered the water and protested the warship coming in, and I was given 3 years in prison for that. But I don't want to go into details. I only spent a year, thank goodness, was kicked out because of international protests. But 2 years later, that was '84, 2 years later, we got on the ballot an effort to repeal the amendment to exempt the military. And apparently, the Chambers of Commerce and Steve Yamashiro, who was running for mayor at the time, they knew we were going to win and take the amendment away, restore the nuclear-free law. And Yamashiro dumped in thousands of dollars from his mayoral campaign into this partisan ballot issue, and we lost by less than 0.5%. And the courts declared that him putting mayoral campaign funds into a partisan issue was illegal, but the deed was done. So, I mean, this is a little history of efforts to deal with nuclear efforts in Hawaii. I just wanted to give you. But let me just emphasize a few other points. out of this, this particular thing on Pohakuloa. And again, I think I said Marquez, he's a personable person, but in terms of his dealing with us, he stiffed us on so many occasions of opening up public access to have ceremony at Pu'ukapele, an ahu that was built 10 or 15 years ago by royal order and other people, to give us the same kind of access there that they give to the Chamber of Commerce. See where the drone field, there's a special drone field up there. And again, one thing that's totally absent in this EA, and that's why I think we need to call for a full EIS, because to understand impacts to cultural resources, you have to know the impacts that are taking place up there. Now, they've been bombing for 70 years, and the last figure that we had was during the Stryker EIS, they said that 14.8 million live rounds a year are fired up there. Everything from small arms up to heavy bombing. And one thing I think very few people are aware of here, that B-52, B-1, and B-2 bombers from Missouri, from Louisiana, from Guam, fly nonstop, bomb at Pohakuloa, sometimes from up 30,000 feet, never touch down, refuel in the air, and go back to their places, Missouri, Louisiana, and Guam. Now, we have to know how many live rounds a year are taking place up there. What kind of weapons are being fired up there? Are there other DU weapons that have been fired besides the Davy Crockett? That's the one they acknowledge, because they were caught with that one. So I would urge everybody, and we need to press them on facts and figures. What are your impacts, so that we can really assess impacts to cultural resources? So the fact sheet I put on the table there of Pohakuloa is just 11 points about some of the things, but we need to, as citizens, demand answers to questions that the citizens have. I've been asking questions of commanders up there now for decades, even did formal Freedom of Information Act requests that they refused to answer. Now, something's very, very wrong in this process, you know. So we shouldn't tolerate an environmental assessment that says, as Donna quoted, and I want to read it again, the general objectives are to eliminate impacts to the military missions arising from cultural resources. Should be the other way around. You know, that's the key issue for me. So a full environmental impact, and I would say we push what the county council called for back in 2008, stop all live fire, clean up your mess, and develop an exit plan. We want to see an exit plan for PTA, not more bombing. Thanks a lot.
Steve? All right. Color my for the mic stand. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's important. I do, as a matter of fact. Let's get this thing.
I have another one at that. Yeah, it keeps coming down. There's another one.
Okay. Sorry, it's a loner. Steve? No,
I'm going to hold this. Aloha. My name is Steve Hirakami, and I'm the proud principal of the Hawaii Academy of Arts and Science. And we have many students here that this is outside of their school day, and they came to be active in this movement. I thank all of you. You know, in this education job, a lot of times my job is to inspire and influence young people. This particular instance, our young people inspired and influenced me. In September, 10 of our students went over to Kahawalawe to perform some rebuilding trails, archaeological sites, and of course to try and replant some of the damage that had been done over the decades of bombing Kahalawe. Well, before they returned to the Big Island, it was such an impact for them to see all the damage, the irreversible damage that was done on that island. And it made an impact on them. And before they left the island, they made a pact among themselves to bring the knowledge that they learned back and apply it to the Big Island. And they came back and they shared their experiences. They made a pretty nice video that we're going to watch later. And they actually assembled their student body, and they presented what they learned on Kaho'olawe, all the damage, and about the broken water table, about how it'll never return to the state that it was before. And they say that, hey, you know what? We got something on this island. You know what? Nobody lives on Kaho'olawe. Nobody lived there when they were bombing. But they're bombing our island. We live here. We're residents here. They're bombing where we live. How's that? And this made such an impact on them. I'm so proud of them to, you know, this isn't something that adults tell children. This is their initiative. This was totally their initiative to come here and to start and to spread the word. And their mission now is to join with other students to spread the news and to spread it island-wide, maybe statewide, on what's happening here on the island. And I'm going to tell you how important this is, because Jim and I, we're the same age. We're in our 70s. And we need this kind of young energy to carry on this, because we're not going to settle this tomorrow or next year. Who knows how long it'll take. But if we have committed citizens rising in our midst that will carry on this battle forever, someday the right will be, it'll be Pono at Pohakuloa. And that's what the future lies in these young children. And I think that I'm really inspired by them. I'm really influenced by them. You know, one of our duties in education is to make them aware of what's happening to the environment, to the world, to the climate, to what's happening around them. And one of the things with learning about the environment is the word irreversible damage. The extinction of, we're the ground zero for extinction of animal species. We're ground zero. Once it's gone, it's gone. I have seen so much irreversible damage in my years, and I grew up at Makua. Anybody know where Makua Valley is? A beautiful valley, beautiful beach in front of it. And they've been bombing that since I was a kid. When I was in my 20s, I found out about the bombing of Kaho'olawe, and I got involved with the original Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana group that still exists. In fact, they sponsored the trip to Kaho'olawe for our students. And we're committed to going back. We're committed to going back. And now here we are at Pohakuloa. Sacred land being bombed. What are we going to do about it? And like Jim said, we are the seeds. These students are the seeds. We got to make people aware. A lot of people don't know. All you have to do is drive over the saddle during the summertime, and you'll see all the bombing, and you'll feel it. You hear it, you feel it. And this is an outrage. There's a community very nearby called Waikiki Ranch. There's a lot of really yuppie homes out there. Rich people live up there. But little did they know that they would be living right next to a bombing range. So I applaud the students. I know that there was a student a speaker that was going in front of me, and but I guess he's checking out. But I'm just proud of all of you, and you'll see some of the inflections in the film. So I thank you, students, for coming out, taking your time. I thank all of you here, citizens, and I just want you to know that we have some committed young citizens to carry on this work. Thank you.
Okay, that was actually my mistake. I guess his name wasn't scribbled out. Christopher, is it? All right. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Christopher Wiesenbauer. So I'm one of the 10 people who went on the Pohakuloa trip. Other guys, can you guys like raise your hand or something? All the other students are people who, by word of mouth, decided to come here and on their own initiative came here to watch this testimony. Yeah. So I have two things to read. I have my own testimony and I have a petition from our school that Kimmy wrote up, Auntie Kimmy, and Thea, which are the two teachers who brought us here today.
What's your school?
My school is HAAS, or the Hawaii Academy of Arts and Science. That's in Pahoa. Yeah. If I seem nervous, it's because I am. So I'm 15 years old, and when we went on the Pohakuloa trip, I got to see firsthand the destruction that these bombs can do. I mean, there's craters, there's almost no plants on the island, there's a lot of struggle with erosion because of the bombing, and it'll be a long time before we see Pohakuloa get anywhere close to where it was. And I wanted to read a little excerpt from an environmental survey that was done at the time while bombing was still being done on Pohakuloa. And it's about the beneficial environmental effects of military use on the island, ranging from the pulverization of the island soil, which made it amenable to the growth of vegetation, to the accumulation of rain runoff in bomb craters. Yeah, that kind of speaks for itself. With that kind of mindset of the military, how can we expect them to change? And with that mindset, they can explain anything away. And here on this island, we have Pohakuloa, which is 9 times the size of Pohakuloa. And like Steve said, Pohakuloa has 0 residents. We live here, and they're blowing up our island. So in closing to my personal testimony, I just wanted to say, please stop the bombing. And then from what Thea and Kimmy wrote, we wrote up a petition. Do you guys know how many signatures we got, or an estimate? Okay, so. Okay, if you guys want to sign a petition, we have a petition. We, the undersigned residents of Hawaii Island, humbly petition Governor David Ige and Mayor Harry Kim, our county and state representatives, and the courts to rule against the U.S. military's request to renew and expand their lease of the land in the Pohakuloa training area on Hawaii Island. We not only ask you to deny the renewal of the lease, but also to revoke the lease entirely based on the health and environmental risk posed by the presence of depleted uranium within PTA. We believe that the U.S. military has been and continues to be dishonest and reckless with their contamination of Pohakuloa with DU. Continued bombing and artillery testing within PTA without any evaluation or monitoring of DU in the soil, wind, and water is unacceptable. We believe that the U.S. military has been and continues to neglect in addressing the health and environmental risks posed by the lack of cleanup and continued disruptions of the areas within PTA, contaminating with DU and other toxins released or related to their activities. We are extremely concerned about the health and safety of our island communities, local residents, members of the military stationed here, and tourists, as well as the ecosystems of our island. We believe that the U.S. military must cease and desist from further degradation of Pohakuloa until this issue is addressed. We consider our communities and our entire island to be in extreme danger. Please rule against any renewal or expansion of leased land to the U.S. military in Pohakuloa, and please consider revoking the lease entirely based on dishonest and dangerous use of Pohakuloa training area by the U.S. military. We believe the demilitarization of Pohakuloa is the best course of action for the future of our island home, and mahalo for your time.
You know, before we go on, I really want to mahalo Christopher and all you guys from Haas for coming out. Actually, even these last few minutes, as I'm kind of listening to all this and looking at you guys sitting here, I'm actually stoked that you guys are here because, for the last, I don't even know how many years before, Mauna Kea happened, I remember being one of the only guys that's my age and looking around at a lot of these faces that I still see here. And actually, I tell this story every time I get a chance where Jim himself actually, I remember him asking me, where are all the young people? And I told him, I don't know, I hang out with you. But no, it's hugely important. And I remember what it was like when I was the only guy under 30, in a meeting about whether it's geothermal right down the road from you guys. That's how I know Steve actually is from when geothermal came back as an issue a few years ago. You guys all saw Mauna Kea blow up on Facebook and social media, Instagram, everything. And in a few years, it's got to be you guys, because somebody has to care. Somebody does. And if nobody cares, then, we lose everything. Or we stand to. Just real quick before we continue, I want to ask all you Haas kids, and this is a little bit off topic, but you guys listen to music, right? How many of y'all listen to punk rock? Y'all heard of Anti-Flag? Go on YouTube, go on Spotify, look up Anti-Flag. It'll inform several of your decisions over the next few years. I highly recommend it, especially you guys who are paying attention to me right now. Seriously. Okay, real quick. Before I got into the movement and all these things, when I was about your guys' age, I discovered punk rock, and that's what brought me home to my culture. Because there was a time there was, oi, 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 punk rock became cool, only pa cool. You got to find your way home one way or another. So, and I just want to impart that to you guys before we continue. Corey? No, this isn't the time for that. Corey?
Aloha. We have some really awesome speakers tonight, so I really thank people for putting this together. So I'm Corey Hardin, and I plowed through the EIS. That's why I'm kind of cross-eyed tonight. I would say the plan has three major flaws, and it should be rewritten. The first flaw is the plan totally turns a blind eye to the illegal takeover of the nation of Hawaii. There's a very sanitized history section. It says the Hawaiian monarchy was overthrown and the subsequent Republican government appealed to the U.S. for annexation, eventually succeeding. The plan should say that U.S. troops assisted in the takeover, that the nation of Hawaii never agreed to annexation, and that the U.S. and the military are illegal occupiers. That's not there. The second flaw is the plan also turns a blind eye to the military's destruction of Native Hawaiian culture by actions that directly affect the culture, and also by destruction of the natural world to which Native Hawaiian culture is, deeply bound. The plan says nothing about the radioactivity in Pearl Harbor, the tons of hazardous old ordnance left on land and in the sea, the threat to the aquifer on Oahu from the Navy fuel tanks, the ongoing bombing and live fire, and I could go on for days, but there's lots. Some of the most brazen sanitized history is when they talk about tests in Ola'a Forest Reserve on this island in 1964 and other tests in 1966. They say nothing about the germ warfare agents, the hallucinogenic benzoic acid, and the sarin that were used in those tests, and about all the lies that were told to the public to cover up. And when the county found out that canceled the lease, the Army said, oh, we're doing weather tests up there. And it turns out they're testing all this, extremely hazardous stuff. The county canceled the lease when they found out. The third flaw is that the surveys for cultural resources are inadequate. So there's really no valid basis for this plan. Only 1/5 of the Pohakuloa impact area has been surveyed for cultural resources. And I remember Moani Akaka, who has passed away recently, but a tremendous activist, talking about all the burials and cultural sites in the impact area where they shoot stuff in the impact area. They've been doing it for years, and they rarely clean anything up unless they want to, build more military structures. But, they don't know what's in there, and they've been shelling it for years. On the surveys, half of the areas outside this impact area, half of those have not been surveyed. That's about 62,000 acres. The plan itself questions whether past surveys were reasonable and in good faith. That's probably pretty sanitized. It's probably worse than that. And the plan itself said that older surveys need updating because they're less thorough than modern surveys. Even with all this not very good work, as Jim mentioned, they have found almost 1,200 archaeological sites. So who knows how many sites are undiscovered? And there's still, bombing and live fire. So they need to do thorough surveys for the whole area and then rewrite the plan based on updated information. The mindset and the actions required to achieve death, destruction, and domination pull us away from nurturing the finely woven threads that connect us to the natural world and our cultural heritage. If we lose that connection, who won?
Michelle?
Aloha. Glasses on. My name, can you guys hear me? Okay. My name is Michelle Prevost, also known as Shamadan. I live in Hakalau on the foothills of Mauna Kea. My message to the armed forces that practice their war games on our sacred mountain is simple. You are desecrating the land, very disrespectful to the earth that sustains us. And on top of that, we as humans living on this island have to breathe the polluted air that is created by the war games. Stop playing your games on our sacred mountain. We want peace. Can we focus on that instead of wars for greed that are happening as we speak all over the world, funded by our US tax dollars? No more. If we do not respect each other and our Mother Earth, we will become an extinct race. No more wars is always my prayer. Mahalo.
Tomas.
Aloha kako. My name is Tom Brennan. I'm here because a lot of my students are here and other things. But primarily I'm here because I had the experience on Kaho'olawe with the students. But then again, I've been on Kaho'olawe for the last 25 years and I've been involved and I've seen it. And I was looking at this piece of paper and thanks, Jim, for everything you do. Yeah. And the thing that caught my eye here was 5 times the size of Kaho'olawe. And then I believe Chris said 9. I can believe that too. It's more than Kaho'olawe, for sure. And I started thinking about 5 times. Like 5 times what to get done? How much more do we need to work to achieve peace, to achieve stopping the bombing? This is why we're here, is to stop the bombing. Yeah? I mean, I know that's what I want. And I've been seeing it. Yeah? The first time I went to Kaho'olawe was 1990 when the bombing was first stopped on the island. And I was stoked. I was so like, whoa, this is exciting. I'm going to see hundreds of people show up. And it just so happened because of logistics or whatever, there was only 17 of us that showed up to celebrate the opening of Lono Ikamakihiki. That's the season we're in, gang. It's here. And so that was my first experience, going there expecting hundreds and seeing only a handful. Yeah? So I started thinking 5 times. You guys got to do 5 times more. 5 times more activism. 5 times more juice. 5 times more getting out there and making sure this gets done and taken care of. You know, the reality is, as much as I've been involved, yeah, I doubt very much if I would have been here tonight if you guys didn't come up and say, let's do this. Yeah? There's a saying, reactivate the activism. Yeah? And as far as me, my activism has kind of been, you know, kind of, but I've been doing it thinking, well, this is where I need to stand, this is what I do, I teach, I'm in my community, I know people, all those kind of things. Yeah? And the reality is, I haven't been doing my 5 times more. I haven't been trying 5 times harder. I haven't been thinking, or as it said, do your homework. I haven't not working 5 times more to make sure that the bombing stops. Pretty simple. So the challenge, and the reason I'm here, because you guys are here, and I thank you for that, and I thank you for this rush that I'm getting now, because I understand activism. I understand what it takes. I've been there, but I've been away. I need to be back. All of us need to be back. And it can only happen if you guys continue to do 5 times more than what is required. And we, us guys, we still got to continue what we think is 5 times. You know, we got to do what we need to do. We're here. You guys are there. So all I'm saying is, stop the bombing. The military, you guys know you're wrong. They know. And I don't know why, you know, they continue to do what they do. Because even Mother Earth is speaking to them. Yeah? Even the Earth is telling them what's happening. But that's where it takes 5 times more. I like the 9 times, Chris. If it takes 9 times more, do it, guys. Don't hold back. Stay strong. I love you guys. Aloha.
Masako? Masako? Yeah.
I'm shouting.
Aloha. Good evening. My name was called. I wasn't really prepared to make any statement, but I've been thinking about this Pohakuloa issue certain years now, for certain years. And tonight, so what I'd like to raise some different angle in this problem. I have heard dozens of people and occasions. However, when you have some idea and then you believe it's good, but there's an opponent, and that's not good, and you face the opposition. But you have your sort of face, or face, more like a face. You don't want to back down with your own good idea. So it's sort of a never-ending confrontations and not going particularly any positive direction to come up with the mutual solution. So I don't know, I'm making myself clear, but I hope with the Pohakuloa, if we are able to come up with a counter offer, sort of, instead of you're doing bad, you're not doing good, or you're bombing us and you're giving us a dirty, polluted air, but instead of just, well, I'm not really, being negative to people who have been in this protesting, but if we can come up with some alternative that they might stop thinking. I mean, they might start thinking, start thinking differently. So, proposing some alternative, which could be somehow would be the breakthrough. That's what I've been past, a few months, and I have my husband here tonight with me, and he said, "Do I have any minutes limit or something?" Anyway, okay, let me continue. He said, "I know the good solution for this Pohakuloa." So I said, "What is it?" So he went on and on. And it sounds like a far-fetched. No, that's too unrealistic. It's too, people wouldn't like it, and so. But maybe he can share that with you tonight. So I will introduce my own husband, and he can share his idea of alternatives with you tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you. I signed him up. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Michael Ryan. That was my wife, Masako Ryan. And over the, I guess I certainly didn't plan on speaking tonight. I don't know whether you call this being snookered or not, but thank you, dear. Anyway, I'll make this very brief. We have two large problems in the state of Hawaii. One has to do with our growing homeless problem. The other has to do with a rather unwelcome presence of the military, particularly in PTA. It occurred to me that those lovely Quonset huts in PTA, the medical facility at PTA, and a number of other accoutrements at PTA, the mess hall, the feeding arrangements, and so on and so forth, might be very amenable to a large-scale solution to the homeless problem. Of course, one thing that would be required would be for our dear friends in the military at PTA to pack up their suitcases and say bye-bye. So once they had departed, then the state of Hawaii could begin to turn this facility into a constructive purpose. And I guess that's basically the extent of my suggestion. There's some other wrinkles to it, but you get the basic idea. And I hope I didn't preempt any other speaker from their time. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Paul Patnode. Many of you may have seen me on Naleo. In any case, perhaps I should start out with something that Albertini once said, why do we only rest in peace? We should live in peace as well. We have I would like to point out, the only chance we've got, because children are probably the only chance to change things, and they have to use the internet. Now, here is a teenage girl at 15 years of age. It took her 2 years in Tanzania, that's Africa, to get clean water so they could go to school and not die of diseases. One way you can use the internet, not only on the social media, but you could very well on this island, and no one yet that I've spoken to, that I've encouraged to, besides one woman that once was over here, has ever taken advantage of the fact that you, as children, you may need an adult approval, can speak on internationally, worldwide, on Naleo TV. You can see what I say on Naleo by going to naleo.tv and check Hawaii Island Speaks Out, HISO, for every month. 4 times a week. This is on live on channel 54. It is worldwide on the internet by going to Video on Demand. You have to use the internet, and that's what these people have done. The young people, because young people in public schools are not permitted to learn real, true history. True history is forbidden in public schools. That's why I'm amazed, because your teacher said something about an anti-flag, or someone said something. Now that is where my problem started with my daughter at Mountain View High School. She came from Nicaragua, a country that this country killed 62,000 Nicaraguans, equivalent to killing 6.2 million in this country to bring them democracy. And I requested that because of that, she not have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. At that time, they took her out of English as a second language, and she had won that at the University of Hawaii. They wouldn't let her participate in the second year because they said it wouldn't be fair. She won it in 3rd grade. They wouldn't let her participate in 4th grade because it wouldn't be fair to the other students. She'd just keep on winning. That's what their excuse they used. So we have to teach peace in school, not just war. And I really think that the only chance we got, people will pay a lot more attention to young people. You have a lot more effect because, hey, the old people were just, how much more longer, I'm 78, how much longer am I going to be around? Just wait for them to die. I noticed this was from Trump's daughter. Why I disagree with Dad on global warming and so on. In any case, he's her assistant now. So anyway, that's pretty well, what I could say. I could go on, but I've already said what I wanted to say at Waiakea High School when the military actually did show up, and I talked for half an hour afterwards with the liaison, the civilian liaison, with the military. But as we see, it had no effect. Now this young girl, took over 2 years to get the clean water in her village. You will take, as you were told, 5 times, maybe 4, much more than that. But you have to get numbers. Without numbers, you're not going to do it. You can't use just logic. You certainly can't use logic with the Department of Education. Thank you.
Jeff, and then Shelley, you're up after Jeff.
Okay, my name is Jeff Shaw, and I'm sure that the people at Pohakuloa will be aware of me, but anyhow. These documents are more remarkable for what is left out of them than what was included. For example, in the section that explains the history of Pohakuloa, it almost skips entirely how Umi relates to it, despite the fact that Umi's heiau is only a few miles from the western boundary. If you look at that map that I posted there, you can see that. And there must be like stuff that, remnants of his time all over that place, but they refuse to acknowledge it. In another Army document, they allude to the human use of the Saddle region declining at this time. They probably know that the sacredness of the region is a factor. The ICRMP states that there are no sacred sites when in reality the entire area is sacred, and there are many sites that back it up. They refuse to accept any reality that contradicts their narrative that PTA is essential to national security. They even ignore the fact that one of the most active volcanoes on the planet looms over PTA, which is Mauna Loa. Who in their right mind would place an essential component for national security hours from a potential volcanic eruption? Does Bali have a training area essential to the Indonesian army, for instance? The most egregious omission is an explanation of how they plan to comply with all the various regulations inside the impact area. The question has been raised at consultations, and they can't pretend that there isn't a conflict. I was told by the commander that this would be an issue that needs mitigation, but this document doesn't go into that. They say in the process of the EA, only 2 alternatives were examined: implementing the ICRMP or maintaining status quo. Is this an admission that the status quo is inadequate? Was the community involved in making this decision? I did see reference in the document that should have been the guideline that they followed. The Secretary of Interior's standards for restoration. It states the standard is one of 4 distinct but interrelated approaches to the treatment of historic properties. Restoration depicts a property at a particular period of time in its history while removing evidence of other periods. I suggest they depict pre-1942 Pohakuloa and remove all evidence of PTA. While doing this, they can creatively use many of the tools at their disposal, such as drones and robotic vehicles, to fulfill training guidelines. Peace and stability can only happen when sovereignty is restored, and the military removing their rubbish is an important step to ensure that reality. We can no longer afford to live in a world where humans exert control by force. That was never a good option, but anyone with a clear mind can see that the insecurity that emanates from this paradigm is detrimental to the planet and human development. True security is when we no longer fear each other. Let's work together to achieve that dream by demilitarizing Hawaii. Another huge mission from the ICRMP is the interface with a living culture that feels the impact of every explosion at PTA like it's targeting them personally. Please do what is right and love the Aina. Stop bombing Hawaii.
Shelly. And then Leila, you're up after Shelly.
Hi, aloha. My name is Shelly Maka'ala Nakoa Mahi Hanai. I wanted to really thank all the Haas guys for being here. My daughter actually went to Haas, and it really changed her life. So thank you so much for being here. And as Jim mentioned, I just wanted to invite you right off the bat here. Yes, it's true. There is a CON convention about the 2/3 legislative vote. So we do have concerning the depleted uranium at Pohakuloa. So we have an ongoing working group going on, and I wanted to personally invite Haas to be involved in our process. And you can, I did give Steve a copy. It has the lease, it has different things in it, the packet that you can look over later. But so I wanted to invite you to come up with, you can have a representative, you can have a delegation, whatever you want to do, and to have interface with Malawaina, and my contact number is also on there, because we do need input, because it is the future. We need to protect things. So. Long time ago, I received a call from Washington, and basically that there was consultation protocol meetings going on Pohakuloa. So they ended up calling off the consultation meetings because they were worried about a depleted uranium protest. And so it turned out that myself and Linda Fay, who's a depleted uranium educator, we ended up going, being invited, not knowing that it was canceled mid-flight. The PTA folks said, well, we can't have any discussions with any Hawaiians. So me and Linda looked at each other and said, well, do you see any Hawaiians around here? And both of us had blonde hair, and they said, no, well, I guess we can meet with you folks. So we ended up meeting at the CRM, then we went next door to the state park. But in actuality, that was an incorrect statement, because the Hawaiian Kingdom actually did have people of many different races. So if they were referring to Kanaka Maoli, okay, that's your host culture. That's actually under the Section 106 when they have consultation protocol meetings and whatnot. And I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, a mixed group here. Basically, at this point, I will say we are all Hawaiians, but we need to take care of our Kanaka Maoli, and they are being severely taken advantage of right now, and obviously. I wanted to show you, these are the two, I did provide copies of this to Steve. These are documents that were actually given us directly from the Pentagon, from the liaison folks that came in for environmental training for consultation protocol. So I actually have training. I went to college, cultural resource management, and ended up helping out to do consultation in the Schofield PTA depleted uranium hearings between Native Hawaiians and Department of Defense. So what they did try to say, which is where my part came in, was, and looking at these documents, depleted uranium is not a categorical exemption. It cannot be exempted because it can cause environmental and harm to human beings, so they could not exclude it. So I typed up something for the military. Let's see. Okay. So I just wanted to go in under, can y'all hear me okay? Oh. Okay. Okay, so number one, introduction. The Department of Defense is at a historical crossroads, a time to act, and for a turning point in regaining our honor and sense of justice as afforded the United States Constitution, which also recognizes treaties and nations. Whereas in the 53rd Congress, 3rd Session, House of Representatives, in Document 1, Part 1, Appendix 2 of Foreign Relations of the United States of 1894, Affairs in Hawaii, Washington Government Printing House of 1895, does prove the intent of the Commander-in-Chief as to the President's promise to restore the state of affairs in Hawaii. We should do so and make a grand celebration and prompt return. Under international law, the Hawaiians would have 2 years to fill vacancies for running a country once properly announced. And I did learn this when I went to international law class at UH, that basically the Hawaiian Kingdom was illegally overthrown and that a notice could be sent to the Security Council in a neutral country situation, no NATO, and then they would give 2 years to fill the vacancies, which can be found in Kamehameha III statutes of 1845. It's actually available on the internet now, even down to the dog catcher and the postman. Okay, so number two, and this is also included in the packet. This is just a cover sheet from Foreign Relations of 1894, and there's other documents available, including naval correspondence, and other documents are available showing the proof of what the Queen said, what the President said. Okay, number two, cultural sites at PTA. DOD establishes, now I'm just quoting them. DOD establishes policy and assigns for Department of Defense when proposing action which may affect a property or place of traditional, religious, and cultural importance. The PTA has taken for military training, this is myself saying, without consideration of cultural sites within thousands of acres, culturally significant to Kanakamole. Very few cultural and historic sites obtaining objects of antiquities have been documented. Some are not readily recognizable. Section 106 affords confidentiality as to why the site must be off limits, kapu, to live fire training or further destruction. The Department of Defense is not fulfilling its obligations to protect cultural sites under current conditions. Any expansion of PTA would be extremely disrespectful and cause further significant cultural site damage. The PTA does contain ancient village sites and burial grounds known to certain members of the Hawaiian community. They're in great distress for their ancient village. The following is from a meeting with consultation liaisons. The policy of Department of Defense states, the Department of Defense respects, I'm quoting them, respects the traditions and cultures of all Native peoples of the United States, as well as the strong desire of Native Hawaiians to maintain their rich history and tradition amidst other prevalent influences in American society. B, the Department of Defense recognizes a special status afforded to Native Hawaiian organizations by the United States government through various federal laws, regulations, and policies. Comment, the Department of Defense are not actively complying by doing live fire training into DU oxide areas, RCAs at PTA. The permit does not give public assurance nor follow the parameters of the lease. The majority of PTA has not been surveyed for historic cultural sites, and the water resources are not being properly protected. 3, NAGPRA, burials. In fact, a kapuna known as the Man of the Mountain has conveyed his grave concerns for continual bombing at PTA by USA and foreign country contracts. Bones are now exposed and fragmented, laying on the open ground. This kapuna has retrieved Evie bones by putting the fragments into a gourd, and the long bones he wraps in a kapa, with 3 maili stems at each end of the white tapa, beaten within the layers. The man of the mountain has asked me to tell you this, and he says, paraphrased, tell the military Pohakuloa to stop bombing the Evie. Tell them to stop the foreign countries from bombing the mountain. The pieces of the bones are getting smaller and smaller, and I will never be able to rest. I will be up there forever picking up the bones. It has been repeatedly impressed upon me there is great cultural unrest because of unfinished and unresolved problems at PTA. The current activities and posture of Department of Defense are causing cultural trauma to Kanaka Mo'oli. Bones are being destroyed and undocumented cultural sites are presently at great risk. 4, U.S. Department of Defense Instruction Number 4710.03, Consultation Policy with Native Hawaiian Organizations. The Department of Defense has established certain consultations concerning protocols. In effect, the federal government has already federally recognized the Hawaiians in many different ways. The United States, through federal action, has established the basis for a government-to-government relationship. However, it must be noted that the Hawaiians are not a tribe on a reservation, nor a nation within a nation. Hawaii is actually a country and a legal independent nation-state capable of making its own treaties. The United States of America and Department of Defense have openly admitted to the essence of the Apology Resolution, Public Law 103-150, in their definition of Native Hawaiian on page 4, Native Hawaiian on page 13, and of the glossary. It is also very important to consider this when reestablishing better relations. DoD enclosure number 1 references actually refers to the apology resolution in public law, and the overthrow of Hawaii. So in Department of Defense's own document, they're actually admitting to the overthrow. Comment, because the President of the United States of America in 1894 did promise Queen Leleokalani the return of the constitutional monarchy, it would behoove the Department of Defense garrison to examine the Treaty of Friendship, Commerce, and Navigation and the Postal Treaty that was a treaty between 2 countries. The United States should return to its former glory and honor, setting at last peace between the United States of America and the Hawaiian Kingdom. Proper handling of the current situation at Pohakuloa area is crucial. Suggested improvements for consultations. The Kanaka Mo'oli and especially the Kapuna need more time to express themselves and their concerns at consultation meetings. 3 minutes and short comments which are repeatedly interrupted by Department of Defense consultation staff is disrespectful to the Kanaka Mo'oli, whose cultural definitions of consultations differs from Department of Defense. B, special meetings must be held with the Council of Chiefs, all royal orders, the Ho'aina, Kanaka Mo'oli, distinct and separate from public meetings, because the genealogy, cultural content, Kohuna Lapa'au, Papa Kilohoku, and other understanding of what it is to be a Kanaka Mo'oli differs from the general public. C, consultation with Hawaiian nationals. The Department of Defense recognizes the fact that the United States of America was involved in the illegal overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, Ko Hawaii Pai'aina, which was made of people of many different races. And I'm almost done. Department of Defense makes plain its knowledge and admissions of the USA guilt in the part of the overthrow, and therefore the Department of Defense cannot exclude people of other races from consultation meetings concerning public trust lands and Department of Defense actions on government or Crown Hawaiian national lands. V, existing lease violations and issues of concern at Pohakuloa training area. The general lease was signed by BLNR without agreement, compensation, or consultation with Native Hawaiians. The PTA lease states Department of Defense must do a fair market value assessment of the land, and this will be the amount that Department of Defense shall utilize in cleanup of shells and ammunitions. To this date, Department of Defense has never done a fair market value. C, training operations are supposed to be known and information readily available. The use of classified DU weaponry at PTA violated the lease. PTA denied use of DU at PTA, and then DOD said they forgot. Documents showed use of DU weaponry in the 1960s and on, and the NRC told me via phone call that they thought they had cleaned it up. Information, training plans, and bill of lading have since surfaced concerning amounts of radioactive materials brought into Hawaii. The use of DU in general weaponry has caused ground contamination from heavy metals and the DU. The PTA general lease states Department of Defense must avoid ground and water contamination. Further live fire training is compounding the situation, and there are also cumulative effects. Is that good? Okay. And then I think they went into a little bit about the DU, but I just want to impart upon you that while they're stating at this time, oh, it's less than 1 millirem and whatnot, actually what we're really concerned about is one particle of dust. That one particle of depleted uranium dust, if it gets in your lungs, it will stay in there a very long time and wreak havoc. And these are basically less than detectable levels. So that's something that they're not including in the Nuclear Regulatory Commission permit. They're not actually looking at that. And that at this time, we're looking at maybe some remedial action, maybe planting grass to keep the dust down, but at this time, Nuclear Regulatory Commission won't even allow that. So thank you very much, and Steve's got the packet. And thank you so much, Haas, for being here. Aloha.
Mai ka pi'ina kala ma ha'e, ai ka mole o kala I le hua. Mai ka wekiu ma mauna awa kea, ai ke kahi piko ma Pohakuloa pililoa ia a hua umi. Aloha mai kako. So just saying, from ha'e where our beautiful sun Kanehualani rises, to Lehua where it sets from the peak, one of our piko at Mauna Awakea, to Ahua Umi, another piko, very, very close, right, as you had said, to Pohakuloa. Just wanted to say aloha to all of us. My name is Melanie Leila Dudley. I was born and raised in Papa'iko, in Hilo, Paliku. And first off, I really wanted to say mahalo nui to all of those who have already spoken. Personally, I fully support you. Mahalo Shelly for sharing all of those facts. I really think that they speak for themselves. And mahalo nui to all of you, Haumana of Haas, for being here and really taking that time to voice your opinions. It's really important, that we're represented in all of our many generations. Sorry, I'm also really nervous too, so please excuse the fluttering of the hand. That's why I wrote this whole time, Okay, so I'm here today to speak of Aina and to speak of Vai. So Aina, that which feeds us, lands, and Vai, land and ocean, not just our lands. And Vai, our water, our most precious resource. I want to talk about the consequences that the bombing has had on Aina and on Vai. Not to mention, I'm not going to speak of the grave consequences that this bombing has also had on our cultural sites, on our archaeological sites, all of the depleted uranium, and all of the other issues that the bombing has had on our Aina. So I stand here, yes, as a concerned citizen. I want you guys to know I'm trying to speak directly to the military, okay, so not to you guys. But I'm here as a concerned citizen, as a Kanaka Aloha Aina, one who loves the lands and realizes, he ali'i ka Aina, he kawa vale ke Kanaka. It is land who is chief, and we as humans who are merely its stewards. The reason you, the military, are here on our aina is to defend us as people, yeah? So I ask you, what are our basic needs to survive? We need food, water, and shelter, but mostly food and water. At one time, I am sure Pohakuloa provided us with food. The elama trees are native persimmon. Yeah, we call them elama in the Kekahawai Ole, the North Kona region. They once provided food and medicine for our people, as did many, many other of our native dryland forest plants. So, to the military, I ask you, where are the elama trees now? I am sure that there are some, but they are now few and far between. So how can you say that there is no significant impact when it can be seen on the very surface level that there has been drastic and significant change without even thinking about the things that our eyes cannot see? 95% of our dryland forests have been lost. Most of these species have become extinct, and many of them are endangered. Yeah, as they become extinct, that's a relationship. Those are practices, a tradition that is lost. Sorry, I lost my spot. Let me get back, guys. The area of Pohakuloa was once home to these dryland forests. And you cannot say that in the last 70 years, you have not contributed to this statistic. What remains today in terms of plant life, our dear plant people, ohana and ancestors as we see them, are now but fragments. I'm really fortunate and I'm humbled. I get to work in the ahupua of Pu'ua'awa in Puanahulu, which is pretty close to Pohakuloa. I'm humbled to work for the Department of Land and Natural Resources. So we're able to help restore these fragile and vulnerable dryland forest habitats. I'm sure that most of us know that studies have proven that plants react to what we say and do around them. Yeah, if we sing to them, give them names, show them aloha, and really give them just positive vibes, it's been proven that they grow better. Yeah, you guys know that, yeah? Ooh. Let's get back to my spot. Sorry. Okay, so now let's think about the opposite. Yeah? How can you say that these same plants, they don't react to all of this this negativity, this bombing and poisoning of this place that they call home? If we as people, as we plant, we can feel the bombing, can the plants not feel it? Is there no negative effect on our dear plant people? Now let's talk about vai, about water. It is said that we cannot survive without food for days, maybe weeks. Ask yourselves, can we survive without vai? Without water? Our whole culture is revolved around vai. Our term for richness or wealth, vai. A cinder cone, a hill of water, pu'uvai, is a term for our heart. Vayu is the precious vai that come from our breasts. And essentially, that's how our most young ones survive. Much of Pohakuloa is in the ahupua'a of Ka'ohe. Now I'm going to quote Hui Ma'alama Ikiala Ululi. They're restoring the ahupua'a of Koholalele. So if you guys haven't gone, Haas, you guys should definitely go visit them soon. Noyao and Haley, you'll just get even more passion. So they say Ka'ohe is the largest ahupua'a in all of Hawaii. The place name Ka'ohe can be translated as the bamboo, Ohe being the Olelo Hawaii term for bamboo. One interpretation of this place name links the function of the Ohe as a water container, or Ohewai, to the water held within this aina in the center of the island of Hawaii. Considering the location of Ka'ohe, encompassing the central saddle between Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, where Pohakuloa sits, as well as the summit regions of both mountains, it makes sense that our kupuna would have understood the significant role this aina serves as a water container, like the Ohe, holding much of the source waters of the island's aquifer. A mo'olelo, our traditional story, tells us of Pohakuloa and Pohakuakane, who released vai from Waiau up on the peak of Mauna Kea to Pohakuloa. Therefore, linking these sacred waters, of Waiau near the peak of Mauna Awa Kea to Pohakuloa. Although it may not be apparent to the naked eye, Pohakuloa holds tremendous amounts of wai. It's one of our biggest watersheds on this island. Yeah, of wai, our most precious and life-giving resource. You cannot tell us or write in this document that your bombing is not having an effect on this wai. Essentially, our aina, our people, our culture, and our language. Personally, I don't care how many mitigations you put in place, because the loss of one of our most endangered ecosystems in the world, our dryland forest, as well as our precious wai, is once again the loss of our culture, language, a piece of who we are and our ohana. Do we really need to get to the point of breaking Moana Liha, our groundwater table, our aquifer, as you did on Kanalua Moku, on Ko'olave? To continue doing this irreversible damage, a'ole, we cannot go back. Ualava, woki. This needs to stop. It needs to stop, not in the near future, but it needs to stop now. Now I would like to address most of us, yeah, from what Uncle Thomas said, yeah, Thomas. Me too, I hope to see more of us here, you know, and I think as a, young person, I hope to see more of our, our warriors, all of those people that go onto the Mauna, all of the people that fight against geothermal, all of the people who just, right, who aloha, we just love this place, this aina, where we are so fortunate to live. But there are quite a few of us. It's so nice to see all of us here, but there's no way as many people as I would have imagined. And recently, I've also been more active, and I've gone to some of the meetings too, and I expect to see, my homies, the other people who have the same ideals, but I don't. Yeah, so just to tell you guys, especially you of Haas, that it's really na kako, it's our kuleana. Yeah, we cannot just think, oh yeah, there's that meeting, yeah, Thursday Pohakuloa, nah. They get them. We're going to have all the Mauna Awa Kea people, they're going to be there. It's our role. So we really need to step into this role. And I think we do have all of this new technology now. So as was mentioned earlier, we need to use it and try to inform, our ohana, our friends, even those that we don't know, of what's happening, because many people don't know what is happening. And we need to let them know and provide ways for them to help. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo. Next, Gary. All right, and then after Gary, Danny. After Gary. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Nothing to adore. About war, there is nothing to adore. Kaho'olawe and Pohakuloa, the military must restore. Environmentally, they are masters of ignore. The Army treating our precious aina like a whore. They're incendiary, lethal, noxious, heavy metal, I deplore. The Navy's Red Hill is leaking fuel, petroleum threatening drinking water, carcinogenic gruel. 200,000 gallons, a pillage of spillage. The USS Arizona still leaking 9 gallons of oil per day. But for homeless and mentally ill, we will not pay. How sad we sideline the poor. How sad we build guided missiles that roar. Tourists cutely say, the Arizona is bleeding. Our outrage must continue pleading. Pearl Harbor, a noxious a toxic uranium fright. If oysters could glow, pearls would glow a radioactive light. Once a biotically sacred, fish-rich lagoon, 100 years of devastation. Navy, clean it up, soon. To be fun, light, and giddy, how I wish. Instead, we're eating out of a dirty dish. Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, making millions encouraging war. Forget our environment as Saudi arms sales soar. Active landmines buried on a Cambodia farm. One-legged peasants know their source of harm. Number of countries contaminated by landmines, 78. 20,000 deaths per year. Hideous bait. There's Boeing, Raytheon, and General Dynamics Corp. Chewing on them sure ain't like chewing on Gorp. Google them, send them a message from your heart. Perhaps then their brains and souls will fart. Stir the pot, agitate, offend if you must. We've got to crack the Pentagon crust. The world's largest Kauai's Pacific Missile Range, turning barking sands into molding mange. Dropping missiles into the sea, testing and training. Our land is cemented. My heart is paining. Billions to fund our murderous DOD. Will you detoxify? Will you? I beg on bended knee. So Benedict Spinoza, whose birthday it was on November 24th, said, "Peace is not the absence of war. It's a virtue, a state of mind, a position for benevolence, confidence, justice." Thanks for listening.